This is the CHRILLCAST. I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
And I have lots of answers.
We have a full-length podcast for you today with Mr. Spencer Presley, all about his involvement in the Shin Megami Tensei Network podcast. That is his podcast.
I am the whole network. It's a one-man show. I've been strong-arming other ethnicities and races out of it for 8 years going on now. So
no.
just really proud to give us straight white men in the Midwest a voice. We really don't get much of an audience outside of the Quick Trip parking lot in our truck. So it's nice to have an audience on YouTube and now your channel. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're glad to give you a voice.
CHRILLCAST is canceled. I thought you were the Demi Fiend.
Demi Fiend, if you look, that's actually not a spike coming out of his neck. That's a part of our baseball baseball hat backwards, and our aviators are just right in his left hand. You just can't see it, though.
Well, now that the CHRILLCAST is canceled, no, just kidding. We've got some questions for Mr. Spencer Presley, the Shin Megami Tensei Network owner, sole proprietor. And Will, you're going to get the first question going here.
Number one. All right. What inspired you to create your podcast about SMT?
So originally, Shin Megami Tensei Network. God, look at that handsome mug. I don't live there anymore. That whole room is empty now, guys. It's very dusty. So originally, the Shin Megami Tensei Network podcast was and wait for it. This is a great podcast name, so be sure to take my advice. The Persona podcast.
Ooh.
Started in 2012 with a small group of friends of mine. It was my friend Will from Australia, my friend Lauren, who was my old editor-in-chief's, well, they're still married, editor-in-chief's wife, who was also a friend of mine. She lived in Europe, and I had another friend named Melissa who lived in Wisconsin. So all of us, and also if you're listening to this, on top of don't have a name that bland, don't have that many hosts in that many time zones and planning to do a weekly podcast. Scheduling that was a nightmare. But I loved starting the show. It actually, ironically, started for like the most selfish of reasons. I had always loved podcast for like the longest time, and the site I was working for at the time was called Gaming Union Network. They had sister sites called Final Fantasy Union, Kingdom Hearts Union, and Tales Union. There was actually originally even going to be a Halo dedicated one because the site owner, Daryl, is a really big Halo fan. It was going to be called Bungie Union, which ironically, I'm sure if they actually had stuck with it for like when Destiny got big, would have actually been pretty popular. But just Halo was kind of in that weird flux phase at the time of like pre-Destiny, but also like post Halo 4. So like there wasn't like, okay, well we'll just kind of stick with the weeby stuff for now and just to go for there. So my original plan was I worked as I'll do anything and everything on the website, as like I was doing news posts, I was doing interviews, reviews, previews. I was also doing all of the PR in terms of making PR contacts, getting PR like review codes, like setting up everything for it. I was just trying to do everything I could to kind of get my feet in the industry. And my greedy, selfish plan was I wanted to get this podcast to be able to start a Persona union, and thought that'd be really, really cool to like make a new sister site that I could be in charge of. So while that never happened, the origins of SMT actually come from the Gaming Union Network forums. So it started off as a community podcast on this website's forums, where I don't think the forums are around anymore, but every week we'd be like, okay guys, if you have questions, let us know, because we had a really active forum base at that time, and we were all very excited because this was like pre-Persona 4 Golden and Arena coming out.
Uh-oh.
Really good time for the podcast to start. Everyone was just like chomping at the bit for P4, and the anime had just gotten announced and had already been airing in Japan. So really, really great time to start all of that. And about a year into doing the Persona podcast, I got to a point where I was like, why am I limiting myself and all of our discussions to just Persona? Like, we all like various aspects of it, and SMT is at its core and will always be related to one another. So it's like, I think it was episode 11, so 10 episodes in of the Persona podcast. We then changed it over to Shin Megami Tensei Network, and we've just been sticking with that name. So I'm like, I think we just got to like episode like 180 or something. So it's had its ups, it's had its downs, but like at its core, it's always been the podcast, but more importantly, the community, which has been, I guess now kind of split. It's been for the longest time Facebook only in our like Facebook group, which now has almost like 7.2 thousand people on there, very, very active all over the world, as well as like now through Twitter and Discord and stuff like that.
Just got to convert about 100 more people from the Facebook group to the YouTube channel, and you'd have a monetization on your hands.
Oh my God, I know. Yeah, it's just like it's so funny for it, but plus especially with like how big everything has been. How like kind of like little things get into it, like going into other things we've talked about before. Like I've looked at how many like mods people like Gnarly have like on their channel or for like, different aspects of their community management. I didn't have a single admin or mod help me grow the community outside of myself. It's always been like a one-man show until like maybe 5+ years of doing it all, and it was never out of like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, like, or I can't keep up. Like I've always enjoyed, like, because like even to this day I still look at every post, look at every comment, look at everything that goes in or comes into any aspect of the community, just because I'm always so interested and love talking to everybody as best I can. But what's so funny about it was like when it did finally open up, even like our mod thing was just like a game where like we made a fake presidential election out of it, where people had like, it wasn't like I'm going to pick the best mod. It was, nope, it's a popularity contest. If whoever makes the best video and you guys all want to see this person be the mod, they're going to be the mod. And like those mods to this day are still very, very active, and like to the point of like all the people who are mods are like, I've like all the friends and stuff I've met along the way, like whether they were hosts, guests on podcast, even stuff like just people who like talk in the comments every now and then, whether it be like every day or every couple of months. Like two very special relationships I'll always know about through SMT and just like how crazy it's like grown, even though it's still super small and super humble, is like I have a friend named Kat and I have a friend named Marcus, who they've been dating long distance. She lives in California and he lives over in the UK. They've been dating for like years and years and years, and the only reason they met is because they both started talking to each other in our Facebook group. And like they're planning on like moving in with each other. Like it's just gone on super well, and like it's just one of those like crazy things. Like, well, I have to go to their wedding. It's like how do I not go to that wedding as like as the creator of this monstrosity? So that's a really big one, and a really kind of sappy, more personal one is one of our original mods passed away. I think maybe a little less than 2 years ago or so. His name is sorry. He passed away a couple of years ago, and that was in like kind of a bit of a hiatus for me personally. But even during that hiatus, I was still like active in the community, just not as much with the podcast. It hit me like someone, like a best friend I grew up with, died. And it was this person I'd only ever talked to through Google Hangouts, YouTube comments, and Facebook Messenger. It was just like, it was so weird. And like to this day, like his Facebook account is still in our mods messenger chat, because it's like I can't take that out. Like that's so weird. It's like he's still there, like, even though he's like not there. It's like it'd be wrong to like take him out of like the chat, even though obviously no one's ever gonna type in that account again. So just like stuff like that has always like been so special to me in terms of like why I keep doing this and why I appreciate making this community as big, weird, stupid, and crazy as possible.
How would you describe your relationship with video games then?
Oh my God, I'm a big loose oor. I'm a big whore about it. I'll play anything and everything. I love all types of games, even games I don't often play a lot of, like sports games. I'll find weird things that will get me really excited about it. Like I just recently found out about this game called Gambare Super Strikers. It is a soccer game that plays like XCOM. So you play a soccer match with turn-based percentage mechanics, and it's just like, so like I'll be into anything, I'll try anything. A lot of that also stems from me reviewing just about anything, and since I'm very platform agnostic, like I have nothing I'm in my core, I never have anything that's going to make me want to say no to trying a game at least once.
That's fair. I kind of feel the same way about a lot of games, so I understand.
No, I honestly only play a handful of games.
Though
I haven't branched out a lot.
Financially, that is the wiser decision. Let me tell you, as someone who just had to recently move like my hundreds and hundreds of video games I own physically, there were moments where I went, "Is it worth it?" Batman Arkham City Collector's Edition with the broken arm. Is it worth it to keep hauling you around my house all these years?
Yes, it's Batman.
Yes, Mr. Wayne, I will haul you around one more time.
I just moved too, and actually I didn't have hundreds and hundreds of games, but I did have enough where I had to get rid of some. It was pretty sad.
Can't make those purges. Those purges is like every game to me is like a baby. We're like, I'm at the point where like I've had friends come up to me like, dude, like you have so many games. Like, would you even notice if a game was missing? And I'm like, I legitimately would. Like every game, I can tell you what I was doing in my life and where I was at mentally or like emotionally for every game I've ever bought. Like every game is like a little like time capsule of like what was I doing in my life.
I have an Excel sheet. Does that count?
That counts, yeah. You know, you can have emotional memories or an Excel sheet, one or the other.
Yeah, so Chris actually got me onto that, like doing the Excel sheet thing. But I started getting so depressed because I would buy all these games and I was like, I'm not playing any of them.
Yeah, the backlogs can be tough, but I mean, if someone like me who's been hosting a SMT podcast for like over 8 years and 2020 is the first time I beat Persona 5, I think anyone can beat any backlog goal.
To be fair, I do remember the entire journey collecting all of the Persona games. That is something that will always stick out to me. Like as I was collecting them one by one by one by one, it's like, wow. And that was a lot of money to drop on some of those older ones.
Thank God there's only 5.
Well, yeah, only 5. Well, why don't you ask that next question?
All right. So do you prefer audio only, YouTube pre-recorded, or live streams?
Okay, so the lazy answer is IRL. I love if I can just get my microphone, bring it to someone in person, and we just sit down, hash it out. I throw it into my computer and I post it. Like that's my favorite because I have that like that physical tonality of like you're sitting next to someone, you're talking. There's never like anything kind of distracting you. Like I think one of my favorite things is when I brought the podcast back last year. I didn't really have a great permanent setup, but I was still doing a lot of local recordings with friends and stuff. I met a lot. Hey, remember when you could like meet up with friends in person? So like a great example is I did a episode like last October where Gnarly and I met up at a local Japanese festival, and after the festival was done, we just sat down because it was my local community college. We found like a quiet corner and we just sat down. Like the podcast header image was literally just the 2 chairs we sat down. Like you could see like our ass imprints in it. It's like, hey, we sat down here for 2 hours and we just talked about like the future because like Royal was just about ready to come out and like other little stuff like back then. So like just stuff like that where like talking in person is easily my favorite because it's the easiest to take care of in terms of editing, preparing, and just recording. And I just enjoy the actual like sit down conversation of it. Like even if it wasn't being recorded, I enjoy like conversations like this in my day to day.
Or you could just do like me and just like say you're gonna edit and then never do it.
Yep, that's also very easy.
Do you like doing the live streams? I'm just curious. I know it's kind of nice.
The live streams are new. A new thing for me, just in terms of like, I had to think of like a quick, easy thing I could do in terms of talking to people, ranting. Like the original version of what I used to do for live streams was, I think the last time I did one like this that wasn't live was when TMS Encore's censorship stuff got announced last year. I did that in my work car. Like I recorded the episode like in my work car throughout the day, and like the audio quality like changes or whatever through where I was recording. But I was just sitting in a car ranting and rambling to myself about censorship changes, and I was like, I like this premise because I could just talk in a room by myself like with no feedback for nothing. But it's even better with like YouTube of like having like that audience. And, like I've noticed every time I keep doing a live show, getting more and more and more and more people coming in talking about stuff, like distracting me with the chat, and people enjoy listening to it even as like a clean recording later. So I figure it's like a win-win for easy episodes.
and it sets you up for good super chats in the future. No.
Oh Jesus, yeah. Follow like the day I get my first super chat, I'm gonna be like that one guy whose name I unfortunately can't remember now. Where like someone like rated his like Twitch stream with like a 200,000 chat. And he was like he got like like he was just doing like crazy dances for like any donation. He was like, oh man, I had like 5 people in here before.
What type of discussions are your favorite? Is it the rambling in front of the camera, or is it something else?
Never lore. I'm looking at the show notes right now. I'll tell you right now. The last thing I could care about is like looking at lore and be like, dude, what can we get into with this lore? Not because I don't like the story for a lot of the games I talk about. On the contrary, it's generally just kind of like my favorite discussions are news and opinions. Predictions are fine, but like I got asked a lot of stuff with Shin Megami Tensei 5 recently. People are like, oh, do you want this gameplay system or do you want this gameplay system to return? And my answer for a lot of it was like, I just want new. Like I want to be surprised. I don't want to know what's coming, or I don't want to kind of get what it's like to, from a previous thing. So I always enjoy news, talking about news, and just reacting to it or hearing other people's reactions. Like one of my favorite things I did this year was there was a Persona 5 Royal preview event, and because I'm a spiteful, jealous little boy who didn't get invited to this preview event, I took and I listened and I read through every site or video I could find online. I read through everyone's impressions who went to this preview event I could find, and I reviewed the previews. And it was just like stuff like that of like me just being very petty and be like, hey, this was a huge waste of money. No one actually told anything worthwhile about the game, and I'm sure it was just like a complete, just like, if not tax write-off, just something so that all the people could get together and celebrate the game being done. Like this was like a huge waste of time. Congratulations. Invite me next time, please.
That's those are the best type of content, the really long petty ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, you got that next question?
Do you find that producing content makes you more likely to play video games or less likely to play video games? Like, are you still playing for fun, or does it feel more of a job now after 8 years of doing this?
It would never feel like a job, especially just because whether I'm playing a game for review or I'm playing just for funsies, I am like I mentioned, I'm just into so many different sort of things. So sometimes, obviously, it'll help motivate me into checking stuff out a little bit more. A great example is with this year, I'm now getting into the Utawari Romano games, which, outside of having a, I'm sure, very SOE friendly name, is a really interesting visual novel series that actually started off as a doujin game with like light erotica in it and stuff, as like an early 2000s like visual novel. But like the series creators were like, oh hey, in between the visual novels and the porn with like kind of underage looking kid animals, let's put a strategy RPG in here. And fans really resonated with that, and they were like, hey, the strategy part is the best part of this game. And like that, like it became this crazy trilogy of like, well, the first one's super porny, but it sets up a lot of stuff in the other two, and the other two games in the trilogy are like one of the best like visual novels of all time. They're like, wow, this is like such a crazy like series I never would have known about if it wasn't for like me just wanting to check out Atlas games on the Vita.
So basically, it doesn't make you feel like it's a job.
No, it never feels like a job. When there's animal-looking kid porn and strategy RPGs, I'm all in. Let's go, baby.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. That's good.
What are some things you've learned since producing your podcast?
That's one of them. That's something I learned.
I guess to be a little bit of a downer, but very realistic. I've had various hosts over the years do it with me. It is hard and often not fair to expect a host to be as well equipped as myself in terms of level of interest or even level of knowledge or understanding on a topic. For such a niche series already, just because someone is a fan of something like Persona 3, 4, and 5 doesn't mean they're going to have played all of the Persona games. And just because someone is a fan of SMT4 doesn't mean that they've known all these other games that didn't even come out in English. So it's like being an SMT fan doesn't mean you have a cursory knowledge of all the Demon Slayer games or all of like Majin Tensei and all these other crazy various factors. So that's what made it kind of hard back in the day of like, I loved having like a great example is like my longest running co-hosts were Melissa, who I started the show originally with, and my very good friend Waffles, who outside of having a really great name for a 35-plus-year-old man, like I love talking to them and I love getting their opinions, but like you can only for so long be like, hey, what do you guys think of, like when there wasn't news, obviously we talk about older stuff, and it's like, hey, if you guys haven't played all of this, like it's not fair for me to force you to like know about all this. Like I don't want to make it a job if you guys aren't super interested. Like if you'd rather play Final Fantasy 14 than learn about classic Megaton history, I can't really make a compelling argument. So it led me to branching out in terms of what I've been doing now since I restarted the show in 2019 when Catherine Full Body came out. I made a point of I am the host, not it's all about me, but actually on the contrary of every episode I want there to either be a main topic or a main guest we can talk to, whether they be big or small. So I've had friends like Gnarly on, I've had cursory people involved, even if they're not directly involved with the franchise. Like a couple of months ago I had my friend Adrian on. He is a game developer in his own right on his free time, but he also works for limited run games. But I know he's a very big fan of the SMT and Persona games. So I was like, oh, well, this is great. Let's have a game dev on. And when we had him on the podcast, it was like, obviously he's going to give his own unique perspective as a game developer. And what we did is he's someone who's working in Unreal Engine 4, which is the development engine that they're making SMT5 in. So we were having this great discussion of like, hey, what's that going to be like taking these demons who have never been in this kind of a game engine before, and like how are they going to make SMT4 look good on Unreal Engine 4 as developers who've never really messed this before, and like someone who has knowledge of that engine, and just kind of talking about it like that.
So I guess to summarize, you've learned kind of how to have hosts on with various levels of knowledge, also how to interview people well, and how to review games on a podcast. Essentially, that's what I got out of what you said.
Or I guess if I could at least summarize it a little quicker, how to try and hopefully do that well. I don't know if I've always done that well, but I can always try and do it.
Always humble. That's the important part, I think, is like you can never get an ego with a podcast, especially with, you know, I've never felt like I've had an ego with this podcast. Will may differ with that, but Will is the best.
Chris's head doesn't fit in that little box.
Okay, sorry. Will, you got that next question?
Yeah, so what do you do in your offline time?
It's great for you to assume I have offline time. When I'm not ignoring my my recently proposed to wife in the other room, I'm really boring. I work a day job. I run this community. I try and plan it every week, but between that and my regular stuff, I love movies. I love music. Yeah, I'm just a big everything nerd. Like I'm into so many hobbies that I had a moment growing up where I was like, I financially can't afford this many hobbies. So like, it's like I suffer from liking too many things even outside of video games. So anything and everything I almost really enjoy. Like even like not just specifically nerdy things. Like I enjoy hiking, even though don't really get to do that as much. But like I grew up in Arizona, and so I remember really enjoying going and like hiking around like deserts and mountains and stuff like that. So yeah, I am a little bit of everything, but like in terms of the essentials for free time, it's always been video games, movies, TV shows, and obviously like spending time with like my significant other.
Cool. It's always nice to find out that fellow content creators are also just real people.
Yeah, I live my life. I live my life playing one episode of a drama in Dynasty Warriors at a time, just like the rest of you guys.
Put my pants on 2 legs at a time, just like you.
They're real people.
Not aliens. By the way, aliens. Not so good, huh? No.
Listen, it's just a vibe thing. Get over yourself, James Cameron. Go back to Titanic. I don't care when Avatar 3 comes out.
What are some of your favorite... Actually, you know what? Before we do this one, what's your favorite Persona or SMT game?
I'll be a little hot take and say, because I recently did a panel about this, not my favorite of all time, but definitely one that I don't ever say vocally enough. Persona 4 Dancing All Night is easily one of my favorite Persona games of all time, even including mainline. And for SMT, it's probably still Soul Hackers, just because I'm such a aesthetics whore, and like that game like ticks every box that I like in terms of visuals, gameplay, and music.
I have to say, I was very impressed with what Persona 4 Dancing did, with what limited scope of the game they had in general. I thought the expansion to the story was also good, and I thought the gameplay mechanics for a dancing game were really tight. And then there's like that weird like horror-esque portion of it. Without giving away too many spoilers, I was like, "Holy cow, this is actually a game!" Like,
I appreciate you thinking more of the horror aspects of the story and not the part where the ribbon bondage wraps up all the girls' boobs, no matter what age or size they are.
I forgot that even happened.
Yeah, when I was going through the game recently, before my panel, I was checking out the PS4 version, and when I wasn't being amazed at how terrible some of these assets, they definitely did not up-res at all for the PS4 re-release. I was looking at it, I was like, I forgot how many times the girls got wrapped up, and specifically each boob had to get wrapped up. That's quite a PlayStation Vita choice you made there, Atlas.
I completely forgot about that.
No wonder Chris likes these games.
Listen, it's for the story, man. It's for the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to defend that decision. I don't know why they did that. I'm not going to defend that decision. It's artistic style. Whatever. Do whatever you want, Atlas. All right, so on to the next question. What are some of your favorite Persona and SMT channels on YouTube? Besides Gnarly.
I mean, listen, I appreciate Gnarly so much as a friend and a person, but like I mentioned before, we were talking about his channel reviewing a couple, I so don't seek out exclusively like that kind of niche content. It's just like not really what like fills in my feed, just because of how news and like essay orientated like my general subscription feed normally is. But I guess if I had to give a shout out, I'm just such a I will say, because we did talk earlier about it's very hard to be a friend and then a fan. It's a lot easier to be on the other side around. I will say I do straddle that line with my good friend LaRue, where I hate that I can't use his real name because of how long I could known him by his real name. But LaRue is a great channel who definitely could always use more stuff. He actually started off by just being a Did You Know Gaming copycat, but just focused on Megaten. So he still does daily trivia like on Facebook and Twitter, but with his videos and stuff, he's been trying to get into more like different aspects of like going into, hey, how about these different artists, or like what's the current status on different things. Like if I'm not mistaken, I think he's either working on or coming out soon a video about the beta or prototype builds of Nocturne because of all the SMT3 hype.
Cool. Is that the only one you want to shout out?
Listen, I'm amazed I got one. That's about as I will recommend channels for days, but if it's just limited to SMT and stuff like that, so I guess I'll have to do the obligatory just because I'm in a big Discord chat with all these people and they actually reply to me enough. Check out GabMew, check out Maca, which I originally was Jack's bag of Maca. See, I'm really bad because I just called them all by their real names. A friend of mine, Nikki, is working on her own fan-made SMT game, actually, in Unity. It's coming along really well, but I totally forget their stuff for it. But if you just type in, like, Nikki and, like, SMT fan-made game, hopefully something would come up somewhere on Twitter or whatnot, but I'm a very bad friend. So, yeah, those are my shout-outs without ever actually giving enough detail to help. They were on a podcast of mine recently, so clearly I cared enough to bring them on, just not to remember their channel names.
I guess it's all good. Well, you got that next question.
Yeah, that leads nicely into the next question is, what are some of your favorite non-Persona SMT channels?
Besides the CHRILLCAST.
Yeah, the CHRILLCAST gets number 1. I'm gonna give shout outs to I'm gonna try and do a big one and a little one. So a big one that I've always loved and I've never ever it's never steered me wrong. I love the Easy Allies. I've been a huge fan of all those guys way back in the day with game trailers, RIP. But for a podcast channel to be just primarily a bunch of straight white dudes talking about video games, you can't go wrong with Easy Allies. They're just super great guys. It's so cheesy to kind of say it, but it's I've actually had a couple I've had Ben specifically on my podcast before, but I've had interactions with almost every one of the hosts, like Ben, Damiani, Ian, Don. They all bring such a unique, and especially kind of for the industry, a thing of if not their perspective, their personality shines through in all the content they all make. And it's just been one of those things that I'll never get sick of that channel. And a great example is Kyle Bossman recently left to kind of go do his own thing, not content creator wise, but more just he just wanted to kind of get out of games specifically stuff. Him leaving that felt oh my god, it was a part of your favorite band breaking up, even though they're all still friends, they're just doing different stuff. Smaller content creator thing. Let's think of who's one that I should give a shout out to that I'm not a huge scumbag for totally forgetting here. We're going to go to my YouTube and I'm going to go to my subscription list and we're just going to see who pops up that I don't feel super... Oh, I know who I should give a shout out to. My good friend Too Old for Gaming. Too Old for Gaming, the number 2 old, number 4 gaming. He's a really, really cool dude who is another content creator who talks a lot about PlayStation Vita, portable gaming, stuff like that. Really, really awesome guy. His name is Sandeep. I've actually helped him out a couple of times. He has written 2 PlayStation Vita books so far, going over the first, second, and third year of the system's life. And right now he's wrapping.
Oh, that was him.
Yeah, he's working on the third of those. Yeah,
I saw that on Kickstarter.
Was that on Kickstarter? He's actually, yes, it was a Kickstarter. He's actually got the books on sales outside of Kickstarter. If you would like to pick up the first 2 or just pre-order the third one, if you're a fan of either specifically the Vita or just portable gaming coverage in general, he'll talk about Switch things and other games as well. He's just a really, really awesome guy. I reached out to him when he announced that first Kickstarter because a dream of mine has always been to have any form of my work be in print media. I've just always been a huge fan of print media and stuff like that, so he's always been really great to work with, so cannot recommend him enough.
Yeah, I saw that Vita book and I was that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the second to last question here. What advice would you give to someone trying to break into the SMT persona content creation on YouTube or elsewhere?
I would say be very specific about knowing what you want to do. Don't just be I want to make a video about Persona 5 and maybe what else kind of comes up to my head. I think if you want to stick to one specific niche, kind of have a thing for it. My channel isn't specifically SMT only. Obviously, that's a majority of the content. But the podcast is, the weekly podcast I do obviously is centered around that at its core. So try and get as specific as you can with what you would like to achieve. And I think the more niche you can get, the better chance you have of people jumping onto that, whether it be in terms of people coming to what you have to say, and even with even if it isn't Persona or SMT stuff, it's the more weird and niche you think you can get, there's always going to be other people out there. They just might not live near you and will find you through mysterious algorithmic ways on the internet.
If you type in Halo, you find the CHRILLCAST. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's good advice. I think anytime you can be specific, without being way too specific, this is the podcast for people who happen to like toenails on the ground in the basement underneath a cellar. No.
We call that the TWIZLERcast.
The TWIZLERcast. That might work better for SEO. But no, I'm just saying, specific, but not like your market is you. You don't want to be that guy. But, yeah, I agree with you 100%. what would you say is the best thing you've learned and the worst thing you've learned since doing it?
The best thing I've learned is getting to meet different people and different perspectives. The worst thing I've learned is that's tough. The worst thing I've learned. I'm trying to think of how much of a downer I want to be for this.
Oh no.
The worst thing I've learned would probably having to be that I guess people thinking you might think higher of yourself than you actually perceive, and like ending relationships due to assumptions without actually having conversations. Like I've had happen numerous times in my life of someone not liking something that I might have done unconsciously, like without me really being aware of it, rubbing them the wrong way, and then just thinking, oh, it's not going to matter to me if I just never talk to this person again, and then them forgetting I'm just actually a really big baby and I'll take it personally for years and years to come.
Yeah, I definitely could see that, where like somebody might see you having an ego, not you specifically, but like people on the internet, just like, oh yeah, this guy's got his channel, he must have such a big ego. Oh, whatever, see ya.
It's like, listen, I've been doing this for this many years, but trust me, I'm number one, but because there are very small margins.
Fair. All right, well, get that last question going.
I'm actually going to add a question.
Oh, okay.
So, what game should someone play if they've never played like Persona before or SMT? What should be the first one they play?
So what I love is, because there are so many different types of games, I would rather be like, hey, what kind of games do you like? So, like, if you like Metroidvanias, there is a, like, spiritual successor Jack Bros game. Even though it was, like, only released in Japan, there is, like, an English version of it, like a SMT-inspired Metroidvania that came out because of Strange Journey. There is Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, which is, like, one of my most favorite fighting games of all time. Obviously, there's the dancing games. Like, there are just so many different sort of things. Like, my favorite is seeing fans get into the game for these crazy, crazy specific niche spin-offs as their first jumping in point, and then being like, oh yeah, there's this cool RPG series the whole thing is based off of, and then them getting into that. So it's hard to pick one in particular, but if I had to pick out of everything, assuming consoles and platforms isn't really a too much of a deciding factor, I guess I would greedily say Persona 4 Ultimax, just because I have so many memories of that game, and every time I go back to it, I'm amazed at how well it holds up as not only a fun fighting game, but like how well everything looks, and why that game is like far from perfect, especially story-wise. It's just one of those things of like, I consistently always have fun just playing either with strangers or friends, like that game for hours and hours on end. Like when I used to work at GameStop, that was my go-to test a 360 or PS3 game. I'd pop in a disc of Persona 4 Arena, I would whoop the computer's butt doing every combo that I knew on the crappy like controller they were trading in, and they'd be like, "Whoa, that's so cool!" And then I just close up to match and be like, "I know," and then like trade it, and then be like, "All right, let's do next system, please."
Just out of curiosity, didn't they only port Arena to the Xbox One?
I think so, but due to my lack of an Xbox One, that might have stopped me. But you know what? I'm sure with the power of me typing in Ultimax and Xbox One backwards compatibility, that'll tell me. No, only Arena because
That's what I thought.
Reasons. Yep.
I remember.
Thanks, Atlas.
I remember reading that in the forums like forever ago. Not forum, subreddit. You know, somebody said, "Hey, when's Ultimax getting ported to the Xbox One?" And I was like, "Wait a second, what?" And I went to the thing. It's like, Arena's there. Why isn't Ultimax? And somebody's like, Atlas reasons, and it got upvoted like hundreds of times. I was like, "Oh, okay."
That makes sense.
All right. Is there anything that you would like to ask us or discuss, or anything that you would like to add?
Normally, I would chat you guys' ears off way more, but I'm like 2 minutes from midnight, so I'm just gonna politely say thank you for all the awesome questions, and hopefully I did not ramble for too long.
No, you're good. Obviously, you and I still have one last quick segment to film, and then we're done. But Will, it gets to go to bed.
Yes, I do. That's right.
As always, I am Chris.
And I'm Will.
And I'm sleepy.
And we will see you
On next CHRILLCAST. Bye, guys.